it feels like we're gonna trade back. Like if I was to guess, it feels like that's what the Cowboys are gonna want to do to add draft capital. I think they're gonna go wide receiver. Honestly, what's that? What's that
Ooh.
bet? Looking at it right now.
Plus
That's
750. A
plus
lot of
seven
value there.
fifty. Yeah, Michael Gallup just hasn't been good. Brandon Cooks has been touch and go. You need somebody else with them, with CeeDee Lamb, to provide some help alongside a couple of good tight ends. I've seen a couple of mocks with from Blogging the Boys, which is a very good inside Cowboys blog. They've got him slotted to take Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. Very fast as well. 4'3", 40, 6'2", 205 pounds. Like to be that size and be that fast, good route runner, like legitimate deep threat over and above what CeeDee Lamb has done. So I could see them doing that in the back of the first round, plus 750.
This is a good. Yeah, and listen. There's great value there. I mean, it'd be funny though, because if the Cowboys add another wide receiver, they certainly have those weapons there. But I mean, listen, we know Jera and the Cowboys want to win now, even though it's like they've always been in win now mode. But I guess we could continue to make it win now mode as we go.
I look at the Clippers. I think, they had that stretch when they haven't been as good lately, but they had about a 2-month stretch there where they were the best team in the NBA or right there with Boston. And I just think that top level star power of Kawhi is a proven playoff, threat where he's already won a couple championships as the go-to guy. I think he could do it as the guy here with the Clippers. Look at Paul George. Look at James Harden. Like I think he's properly slotted as a number 3 option. Given some of his playoff shortcomings. I actually think the Clippers might be a little bit better without Russell Westbrook right now. He had been struggling lately and not playing as well, so it could end up being a blessing in disguise for them to not have him. But I think Ivica Zubac is one of the more underrated centers in the NBA. Like looking at some Lakers-Clippers matchups, he's held his own against Anthony Davis. And I just think the Clippers, they can go big, they can go small. They have a really good switching defense when they're engaged. And Ty Lue is, to me, a top 3 coach in the league, also a championship coach who's proven it on the biggest stages. So for them, the question mark is always health. And we've seen, Kawhi's not been as healthy lately. Paul George had a situation where he was out for a bit. So that's always the question mark with the Clippers. But if that group can stay healthy, and again, given their just lineup versatility with the roster and with the skill sets that they have, I think they can kind of mix and match in a series and play like a Minnesota. Like Minnesota hasn't been a great matchup for them, for example, but I think they could figure out a way to play Rudy Gobert or Karl Anthony Towns off the floor, expose those guys on the perimeter. And if they can do that, I think that they can win that series. So to me, I look at Denver should be the heavy favorite. I think that, they're just basically 5-9 unit is almost perfect. I can't really find a flaw with it, but putting Denver aside, I would say the Clippers are my number 2 pick coming out of the West.
Looking at Northeastern at 80-1 right now in BetMGM. They don't have to go all the way from the back end slingshot from the early playing round. They at least get to a bye to the second round there. I think Bill Cohen's a great coach. I think with Lucas Sakota, a guy who was out last game, I believe precautionary, is a really good piece. Former Harvard transfer, really talented. They almost beat Virginia at Virginia. Now, I know that doesn't exactly sound like as impressive as the prior versions of Virginia, but still, I think this team really has a high gear. We haven't seen them quite hit it yet because they've had some moving parts with their roster and their lineups, but I think this is a good bet. Like a team that can match up well with their draw in the bracket. So a lot of these at the top of the totem pole, you're not getting great value, in my opinion. I think I want to look for middle to long shots, but never take the long shots coming from the 4 and 4 days, 5 and 5 days especially. It's just tough to do. So Northeastern's the one I think has a couple of things moving in their favor. I'll probably look to bet them game to game. 80-1 up to 100-1 on BetMGM, though. I think it's pretty good value for a long shot.
Something that will never be talked about, that was never addressed because no one cares about the Chargers or maybe the Cardinals for that matter. But in Week 18, Matt Prater missed 2 field goals. And one of them was at the buzzer. And that, if I was to me, I was like, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a Charger. He makes this field goal. I was thinking like it was a playoff game. Because when you're in it, long term, he missed the kick. I think Mr. Bidwell paid him off to miss that kick. So it'd be an easier conversation if they were at 4. They're not. It's a Pandora's box. At the moment, gun to my head, if I have to make a selection, it's got to be Neighbors. I believe so. And that's unfortunate that they screwed up Quentin Johnson because they could go in a different direction if that was in the case. But I think when we get there, I think they'll look hard to trade. We need, there's a lot of buzz that maybe the Chargers can recapture that Pete Carroll early draft season magic where he just came in from college. Harbaugh knows this draft class as good as anybody. Scouted these guys. That's like the vibe, right, to the Chargers fan. So let's get more picks. Let's take more chances at a draft that we have an edge on in some respects, or at least the narrative could be that there's a bit of an edge for the Chargers because of Harbaugh and his familiarity with the entire class. Am I in a rabbit hole where I've read articles about the Chargers about Harbaugh recruiting Brock Bowers to Michigan years ago? Yeah, I've been in that rabbit hole, Trista. The draft is too far away, though. I can't get deeper.
This for a few years in a row that I thought Seattle would be a team we're talking about making some noise in the playoffs. But for their win total, I've seen it at 86.5. I've seen it at 87.5. I like the over in both cases. They've gone over it, even if it's at 87.5. They've gone over it 3 straight years now. They've got elite pitching. The only reason I wouldn't commit to them right now, as we stand on March 5th, to make a playoff run is because they're going to need to add to the lineup. They lost some power. Obviously, Eugenio Suarez going to Arizona. The lineup needs some support. Are you going to get 2021 and 2022 Ty France, or are you going to get 2023 Ty France, who obviously had a major down year? Julio is going to be Julio. The lineup needs help. But when you look at that pitching, they arguably have the best rotation in the American League. Definitely the best top of the rotation, hands down, with Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert. 3 guys who finished last year in the top 6 in the AL and WHIP. You look at the back end of the rotation with Miller and Wu. They don't have a ton of depth there, so they have to rely on their guys to stay healthy. But Castillo should be a Cy Young contender again. And I'm going to go out and say George Kirby this year is going to be a Cy Young contender. He needs to be a little more consistent this season. Last year, his home and away splits were pretty drastic, but it's only going to be year 3 for Kirby. I mean, he's a kid. Kirby is about the same age as me. Wu and Miller are both younger than me, and all 3 of those guys have way more upside than I do. So I love this Mariners team to go over, whether it's 86.5, 87.5. I think they're a 90-win team, and if they add a bat or 2, they make some noise.
Let's take the Denver Nuggets out of this, unless you feel differently about the Nuggets. Most people, Tristan and I certainly do, most confident in the Nuggets coming out of the West. If that's the case with you, then definitely take the Nuggets out of it. If not, then tell me to shut up. But after the Nuggets, who's the team in the West that you have the most confidence in when it's all said and done going to the NBA Finals?
That's a tough one because, again, I would pick Denver. But if it's not Denver, then I got to look at the team that I feel like would challenge Denver the most. And it's a coin flip. But, I mean, it's Minnesota. I'm going to just give Minnesota their respect. Minnesota should get the same respect this year that Denver got last year. They've been leading the West for most of the season. And if you can take away the messiness of their season last year, dudes punching each other right before the play-in tournament, like Minnesota gave Denver probably the toughest run out of any of the teams Denver faced in the 7-game series last year. And Denver didn't have Conley and Towns for most of that season. They didn't get Mike Conley until midseason. They had to get the point guard who was the complete opposite from a demeanor standpoint of Mike Conley out and get Mike Conley in there to see some, tangible improvement there, both on and off the floor. Anthony Edwards is going to be a year better as far as his experience. And then you got a guy like Jaden McDaniels who was not healthy in the postseason. Again, weird stuff that the Timberwolves dealt with right before the play-in tournament, dudes punching walls and whatnot. Like, keep those guys a little healthier. Naz Reid, another one. He didn't play in the playoffs last year. That was a good team they put together, but because the Minnesota Timberwolves have the reputation of being absolutely untrustworthy, one that they still have not shaken despite their sterling record through this point of the year, like, you take that out, that's a good team. They're not great in terms of balance, but if you believe defense wins championships, then damn it, they're the best defense in the NBA, and it makes sense. They have multi-positional guys on the perimeter and one of the best rim protectors of all time in Rudy Gobert. They know exactly what they want to do on that end of the floor. It's just the other end of the floor that gets shaky. But guess what? Things are about to get shaky for everybody. Things are going to get shaky for the OKC Thunder, who have this aura of being trustworthy, being balanced, but they don't rebound. They got a lot of skinny young dudes who ain't never seen a playoff series before, okay? So there's a lot of things that they just haven't been hit yet. They haven't seen the adversity. I'm not saying don't trust them. I'm just saying they have every reason not to be trusted based off the fact that most teams have to get hit. They got to be hurt first before they advance in the playoffs. Denver did it, and you've seen Milwaukee do it. It's the same thing. So there's not a lot of quote-unquote legacy reputation teams, and thank God, because I can't stand talking about the Warriors or the Lakers. But at the same time, you're going to have some really good teams challenging the Denver Nuggets. If I got to pick one, it's got to be the untrustworthy Minnesota Timberwolves.